feel like you're alone? Do you feel like you're on your own doing what you do? Are you the only one?
Do I feel like I'm alone?
Yeah.
I'll do Bronowski's Silence. The answer is yes. But there are two kinds of aloneness. There's an aloneness which is kind of like fertile being alone, where it has a sense of purpose. Then there's an aloneness where you feel abandoned, vulnerable, ignored, outside, lost.
Do you feel those things?
Oh yeah, sometimes. Yes, you do. I mean, when I was first played many years ago, decades ago, you were treated like an outsider. You were by the players, because at that time, we're talking about the 60s, mid to late 60s. Playing new music was such an appalling ordeal for them that you were an invader of their sanity. you brought this new sound which involved all sorts of technical things they didn't have time to learn properly, or they didn't even know how to do. And they got very suspicious if they thought you didn't mean it or you didn't know what you were doing, and they made you feel. They would isolate you. They would actually push you away.
How did you combat that? How did you just carry on, even though you were being pushed away, even back when you first kind of went out into the world?
I think that the relationship that you form with what you're making, when I'm composing music, and I can't do it just on a screen, or like a lot of composers don't even write down anything anymore. I still need a pencil, and I need a bit of paper and coloured crayons to make my different kind of markings, and it's an absolute one-to-one relationship between what's in your head and what you're going to put on paper to transmit to somebody else, and it's almost mysterious, that kind of connection, and you've got to feel, I own this. This is mine, and nothing that anyone can do is going to violate it enough so that I'm completely and utterly depressed. So you accepted indifference, you accepted aggression, you accepted people turning themselves away from your music, because the music ultimately survives, or you hope it does. Yeah. That's how I coped. I mean, there have been times. My first prom piece, in 1975, I was 32. The orchestra abused me as I walked on the platform to take a bow. They said blank off and F off, because they hated what they were doing, they hated the music, they hated me as a result of it. And I went away very, very crushed by that experience, and I thought, I shouldn't be doing this.
How did you get past it? How did you come back from that?
It's another question, really. That's like, well, why do I compose? I mean, that's an elaborate thing to have to talk about.
Start from there.
Well, blimey. I suppose to everyone's surprise, knowing that my music is inspired by nature, I was born in the second biggest city in the United Kingdom, in Birmingham, during the war. I mean, I don't remember anything of the war itself except ruins. I remember buildings flattened and whole streets wiped out in Birmingham. But we lived near railway yards with trucks shunting, trains puffing by, signals clanking, catch points being ripped against by, lots of mechanical noises. There was a street at the end of the Grove where I live with cars going up and down it, buses, trucks. Cadbury's chocolate factory was just down the road, and you could hear that, all the sort of, I don't know what that, furnaces or whatever they're doing to make chocolates. And we had chickens, and they had voices. So I remember the cluck of chickens, the crowing of cockerels. I remember, even when I was still like in a cot, because we had a cherry tree with big overhanging branches. I remember, I wouldn't have been 3, but I remember lying in the cot and looking up and seeing the pink blossoms and the blue sky and hearing this black bird making these incredible noises. And my mum said I started to imitate them even then.
When you were 3? When
I was 3, possibly before. I mean, my first performance, my first paid performance, was my Uncle Albert coming to the house. I don't remember this, but she asked me if I would do a performance for Uncle Albert, imitating the train shunting in the yards and the birds singing and the chooks clucking and whatever, and the wind blowing through trees. And apparently, I refused to do it. They had this big brown draft excluding blanket hanging from a door, and I said, I'll do it behind there, but I won't do it in front of Uncle Albert. And he said, I'm not paying you unless you come out and do it in front of him. So apparently, you know, the money was a big incentive even when I was that age. So I did this performance. But what was that? I suppose I was showing at a really very early age a peculiar and particular sensitivity to sound. I loved just the noises that things made. But imagine, when we moved from Birmingham, my parents decided my father was a policeman, that we would leave the city and go back to where my parents were born, in rural Suffolk. And in the end of the 1940s, we were really talking rural. There were virtually no buses, almost no cars, almost no trucks. My Uncle Joe, my mother's brother, had a mixed arable cattle sheep farm, no petrol-driven machinery. He had 4 Suffolk Punch horses which stood, you know, seems to be like as high as this room. They were massive. They were like mountains on 4 legs. They pulled his ploughs, the harrows, the rollers, the combine harvesters. Were no mechanical noises. It was just the thud. As the horse was walking, you know, these noises, unbelievable. But anyway, we travelled from Birmingham to this rural place in the back of a furniture van. So no bus, no train. We got in the back with the furniture. So and the tailgate was up, so all I could see was like the sky passing and the odd tree or the telegraph post. I had no idea what this transformation was. When I was going from a city landscape to when the thing was let down. I mean, you know, you talk about St. Paul and the road to Damascus, this kind of moment of blinding light. This thing just dropped. Like this tailgate goes like that. And there in front of me was this great big long rolling field full of flintstones and chalk and trees everywhere, forest and the cottage. And at the foot of the garden, only 100 metres down from the cottage, a stream full of life, water bubbling, seething. And then it was July, hot summer day.
How old were you again?
4 and a bit. My Uncle Joe got me up on his shoulders, and the whole family, there were 2 brothers with me at that time, my mum, my dad, Uncle Joe, his 3 kids, don't remember whether his wife was there, but we walked down, he walked into the stream, okay, so he rolled his trousers up, and we're walking down the stream with these ancient older trees making a kind of tunnel archway and willows with gnarled trunks, you know, this was like something out of Tolkien, fairy stories straight away. They were really living shapes. These trees were alive, you know. I thought, oh my God, what the hell is this? And my first kingfisher, this blue flash, Uncle Joe, look at that, woof! And then this kingfisher, this electric blue zooming by, and all the time this ever-changing sound. That was it, you know. When did I know I was going to be a composer? I didn't know I was going to be a composer, but I became totally immersed in sound because you didn't have any choice. Nighttime had a completely different orchestra. It was scary, owls calling. We had otter in the stream, and they have these amazing grunting, squeaking sounds that they make at night when they're fishing. Fox barking, pheasants cackling, birds shuffling in the undergrowth trying to find somewhere to sleep. You know, these were all sounds. I was thinking, what's that? And I wanted to respond. I mean, this is the key moment actually when I wanted to respond. 2 things happened. One, my Uncle Joe bought me a mouth organ. He's the farmer. And 2, he gave me some money and told my father to buy me a book to teach myself to read music. So I was like 4.5, 5. And my dad bought me this black and yellow book called Teach Yourself Music in Ipswich Bookshop in East Anglia. And, you know, I was a willing little kid. I mean, I couldn't even read properly at that point. I doubt I could. So I saw all these dots and shapes and things, but I was already drawing sounds before I even got that book. So I had this little notebook, which I took down, and that stream became, oh God, how can I describe it? A motorway, a sonic motorway of possibility. How about that? You know, it was like a moving, living, liquid, ever-changing choir of different kinds of sounds, and everything along it also made sounds. You know, when the rain was hitting the water or hitting leaves, it made different sounds. The birds made different sounds. I thought, there's got to be some way I could do this. And I realised that the sounds that I was looking at, isn't that interesting? The sounds I was looking at, you know, I realised they had shapes. I thought, I can do this. So if a thrush goes, all I have to do is just a line going like with a pencil. And if it went, I go, like this. And I got book up page after page of drawings of all these nameless, I don't know what they were. I didn't know it was a thrush or a blackbird. I had no idea what these creatures were. But I began to catalogue. Then I started drawing the birds. Then I started drawing the trees. Then I started drawing the water. And all of these things sort of coalesced, if you like. And so concomitant with learning how to read music, I was amazed that musical shapes were rather similar to the shapes I was making with my pencil, just doing my drawings. I was actually composing. I was composing sound by drawing sound. So, you know, even now people say, how do you compose? There have been painters who said, you know, Paul Klee said, who did the painting or me? Interesting question. You know, there are times when I'm composing and I'm hearing sounds in my head, and I'm realising I know how to translate those sounds in my head onto a piece of paper, but I'm saying to myself, am I composing it, or is it composing me? Am I simply like a radio receiver? You know, that I'm just actually, all this stuff's going on and I'm just like, it's all being transmitted by nature. And I just turn on the switches, you know, the mics are all turned on and the sound comes in. It's not as simple as that, but it began as simply as that. And very few musicians perhaps would accept this, but perhaps a lot of listeners would. I think it's very natural to compose. I mean, I think everybody composes. You asked me a little while ago about how do I hear sounds in my head, and I explained, well, everybody can hear sounds in their head. Everybody. Anybody watching this, me talking right now, if I said to anyone, can you imagine the sound of a door shutting? Can you imagine a walnut being cracked in a pair of nutcrackers? Can you imagine the sound of you crunching lettuce in your mouth? Can you imagine the sound of your teeth snapping together? The sound of your favourite kid? The sound of your father? The sound of your favourite piece of music? The sound of a piano? Sound of a rocket going off? Everyone can do that. And why do we do that? It's to survive. You know, we have these things, and these, and that, and this, in order to enable us to actually be prepared for an ever-changing and actually fundamentally potentially threatening environment. It's all strange. Some things in it can actually kill you. Some things in it feed you. Some things in it give you pleasure. Now, nose, eyes, ears, mouth, touch, they're all designed to maximally sensitize us to our environment. What we decide to do with that sensitizing is another matter. And I've learned, terrible lesson, I've learned that in this day and age, in this part of the 21st century, probably for up to 150, maybe since the Industrial Revolution, we've gradually, human beings, the human animal has been gradually taken away from its origins. We're smart, we're technological, we're machine dependent, we're commerce dependent, we're factory dependent, we're society dependent, and in that environment, our senses are becoming less and less important. How many people who go into a supermarket actually pick up the food and smell it before they buy it? How many people who are buying clothes in a clothes shop I've watched women and men. Women do it far more than men. They actually touch the fabric. They sense the fabric. How many men do that? They buy a shirt. You don't see a man going, oh, or smell it, you know, because it's all part and parcel of you having a relationship with someone. You're going to wear the damn thing, so wouldn't you want to feel it and smell it and whatever? Why do little kids put everything in their mouths, you know, everything? You give them a pen, they put it in their mouth. You give them a jar, they put it in their mouth. Everything, because they're sensing everything. We don't do that. And I suppose there is a part of me which sees my music as problematic because my music is born of something very ancient. I might even say it's actually born of something biological. The imperative to compose is a biological imperative. We all make sounds, we all receive sounds. Sound's important to all of us for survival reasons, for evolutionary reasons. And my music has evolved from the same evolutionary patterns that a bird uses to sing, that a crocodile uses to grunt, and an elephant uses to trumpet. And that's hard yakka for a musician or for a musical public to actually take, because they're going to come to listening to anyone's music, mine, any other composer, alive or dead, with a pre-existent set of expectations. You know, it's got to have a tune, because I don't like music that doesn't have tunes. It's got to have a beat I can tap my foot. If I can't dance to it, forget it. It's got to sound like the Beatles, otherwise, you know, it's not on. I only like Mozart, or Bach is the only composer who ever really composed great music. The rest of it, music stopped after Bach. You know, all this stuff is the shutters going down. How has that got there? Just by civilization, by society telling us how to do what we do. It ain't my way. It's a very long answer to your question, how did I become a composer? But I suppose I'm simply saying all humans have this gift for using their senses, not only to receive, but to actually transmit emotion, experience, sensation, affection, fear, loathing, grief, joy. All these things, we use our senses, our whole bodies, to actually let other people know what it is we're experiencing, what we make of what we experience, and what we want them to know about what we experience. There'd be no point in me being a composer if I was a total introvert, because I'd be saying, well, you know, yesterday I had this fantastic string quartet in my mind, but you're never going to hear it because it's just in my head, and that's all there is. It's not in my instinct to do that. My instincts are share it. So I suppose I'm on a journey of continual change and of continual growth. If I knew what my next piece was going to be, it would be horrific. And I have been asked, do I listen to my past music? Not if I can help it. I mean, I do a bit when it's first been recorded or if it's being rehearsed and then performed, but I don't go back to it. And there are actors, I'm told, Maggie Smith, I think, says she's never seen a single ever program that she's made or a film that she's been in, she's never watched it, which is amazing. But I generally don't listen unless I'm really impressed, and occasionally it'll be because the performers are so good. I want to hear it again, or, and this is happening to me in my older years, my music is teaching me something that I didn't expect it could.
What's that?
You know, when you're writing it, you're so much in it. There's not a lot of distance. I mean, in a way, I envy an audience that goes to listen to any music, let alone my music, because there is a distance. They don't know what's going to come. I do. I've made it. I'm making it. I'm in it. Everything I'm doing, I'm absolutely in it. So I don't have the distance of thinking, what's the effect? How do I feel about it? What's it doing, even? You know. So as I've now in my composing, I often find a piece that I've done, I want to hear it over and over again. I want to study the score as if it was Beethoven. Not because I'm dead, like he is, but, well, he isn't because his music's still alive, but because there's something that total involvement can do to you, which is potentially dangerous. It cuts you off from a bigger picture. And I'm always interested in the bigger picture. And I think that's another clue as to why I do paint and draw as well as compose and play and conduct. Because they give me a bigger picture about the things that inspire me. There wouldn't be enough in just doing a musical response. I need every sense to be involved. Yeah. Well,
when you're drawing and painting, when you said you're composing, you're in it and you know what's coming, do you have that same feeling when you're drawing and painting?
That's an interesting question about how much you're in it, and there's a bit of science going to come out now in me. Of our two senses, light travels faster than sound. Okay, so, and you may say, well, excuse me, that's completely irrelevant. Well, actually, it may not be, because you can see something much faster than you can hear, and you can certainly see further than you can hear. And you can see more things around you than you can hear around you. And if you think of that, it means your prime sense, your priming sense, my priming sense is a visual one. So, am I completely surrounded or immersed totally in the processes of looking? Yes, if it's for a purpose. I mean, if I'm going for a walk in a strange new place, I just do what anyone does. If you watch people who are curious, this is a very good clue, by the way. If you go for a walk with people, just watch the number of times their heads turn. And I'll bet you that the number of people I could go for, suppose I go for a walk with 50 people in a place where none of them have walked before, might be a forest, okay? Might be the moorlands, it might be along a fantastic beach. And you walk along with 50 people, you're walking behind them, they're all walking in front of you. Watch their heads. If their heads are just going like that, and they might do occasionally like that, or like that. But if they're stopping and doing this, and doing that, and doing that, they're curious. If they're curious, they'll probably get my music, or they'll probably be interested in it, because that's what makes me do the music I do. It's a wide-ranging, multi-angled, multi-dimensional scrutinizing, looking into of things.